please hit that subscribe button.
Hey everybody.
Better suited to win the Stanley Cup this season. If you are new to the channel, Washington Capitals, the Boston Bruins.
Locked on and he scored! And we're live. Hey everybody. So today I want to talk about the Nashville Predators, particularly what should they do, how should they approach the trade deadline this season. Before I fully get into the video, I just quickly want to remind everyone to please hit that thumbs up button and give the video a like, and subscribe to the channel if you are new. Both of those things greatly help out and are very much appreciated. So, the Nashville Predators are in a very interesting situation as we approach the deadline this year. They've underperformed all season long. They are currently outside of a playoff spot, but only by a few points, still well within striking distance of getting in. So that begs the question for David Poile and Nashville management: how do they approach the trade deadline this season? Last year at the deadline, they were buyers, and they were near the top of the league, and it made sense for them to be buyers. But they're in a very different situation this year. They can't sell. They've got a lot of different options here, but they can't be full-on sellers. They're too close to a playoff spot for that. It doesn't make sense for them to completely give up on this season at this point, because we've seen, especially just last year in the playoffs, all four wildcard teams won their first-round matchup. Carolina, a wildcard team, went all the way to the Eastern Conference Final. All you have to do is get into the playoffs, and you have a chance. So it doesn't make sense for Nashville to give up on this season when they still have a solid chance of making the playoffs. They are not that far back, and they have games in hand on many of the teams around them in the standings. They could be buyers again. They were buyers last year. The problem with that is it didn't work. They were buyers last year. They brought in Wayne Simmons. They brought in Brian Boyle. They added to their forward group at the deadline last year, and they still lost in the first round. They got beat by Dallas. They lost in the first round, and all those, the future assets that they gave up to bring Simmons and Boyle in were all for naught because they didn't do anything with him. So, do they do that again? Do they try again as being a buyer at the deadline? Do they give up more future assets to bring in some, a couple of players or a player and hope that that's enough to really improve them heading into the postseason, enough to get them into the playoffs and then go on a playoff run? Maybe. Another option they have is doing absolutely nothing at all. I mean, the Predators this year have really completely underperformed for what this roster should be. When you look at this roster on paper, this should be a good team. This should be a really good team. And they're not. They haven't been all year. They're really struggling this season. They're outside the playoffs now. Maybe the Predators management says, guys, we have the guys in the room here. We have the roster to win. It's up to you guys to go out and perform and do it and win those games. And, maybe that's what the Predators management says. And they just say, you know what? It's up to you guys in this locker room right now to go out and win. You're more than capable of doing it. Just go out and do it. Or if not, you're going to be going home early. Another option, and probably the final option they have, is do they not necessarily be full-on buyers, but make trades, roster player for roster player, and just do a lineup shakeup. I mean, that certainly is a possibility when you have a team with a solid roster that is underperforming like this. Maybe you have to send a message and shake the roster up and trade some roster players for a player on another team that comes in and maybe they play better than the player that you traded away. Who knows? There's a lot of options here for David Poile and the Nashville Predators. As far as what I would do if I were in charge of the Predators, selling is not an option. You're too close to a playoff spot to sell at the deadline. It doesn't make sense. There's no reason to do that. You have a team that is capable of still making the playoffs. I would not be buyers again. I would not do what I did last year and be full-on buyers again. We already did that last season. We brought in Simmons. We brought in Boyle. We gave up future assets for those guys, and it didn't work. It didn't make us a better team. We lost in the first round of the playoffs. It straight up didn't work. So why would I go out and do that again? Sure, the players would be different, and maybe a different combination could lead to slightly different results, but the chances of that I just think are too slim to make it worth it. I'm not going to give up more future assets for rental players at this point if I'm the Predators, because quite frankly, you still have a shot to get into the playoffs, but you're by no means guaranteed to get into the playoffs. You're outside right now. So, I'm not going to be damaging my future to be a wild card team that may not even make the playoffs or get knocked out in the first round. We already tried it. It didn't work. On to something else. Doing nothing, I think, is a very real possibility if you're the Nashville Predators, and not a bad necessarily possibility. You have a good roster here. I'm looking at the roster on paper right now. You have what should be a good team. The fact that this team hasn't performed this year is probably on the players more than anyone else, because when you look at the roster, this team should be good. They've got goal scorers. They've got a solid defense core. This team should be good. It's up to the players to perform, and maybe you want to send that message to the players that if you're management, like, listen, guys, we gave you a lineup that should win in the NHL. We have the guys that are capable of winning in this locker room already. We don't need to go out and make drastic changes. You guys need to go out and perform and play the right way and win games. And I could very well see Nashville doing that this year. The other option is to possibly make some roster-for-roster trades, and there are 2 pending UFAs in that forward group for Nashville that I really think we could see get moved. Mikael Granlund doesn't even have 20 points this year. I mean, this guy has been a flop as far as since he's come over to Nashville. He's been an absolute flop. He only has 11 goals and 19 points this season. He's making over $5 million a year. Pending UFA, maybe you move him for a second or third line type guy somewhere else. Another guy is Craig Smith, who has 22 points this year. He's a solid middle of the lineup type player. I would certainly think that there would be a trade market for Craig Smith. Maybe you move him and you do some of these not full-on buying moves. You're not giving up future assets for a rental player, but maybe a roster player for roster player type trade that just changes things up. It just shakes up the lineup a little bit and sends a message to the group like, hey, if you're not going to play well, we're going to ship you out and we'll bring in somebody who we think is going to play better. So, I think that's probably most likely where Nashville's going to go. I think their mindset heading into this deadline, and obviously nothing is guaranteed, but their mindset heading into this deadline, I think, is either going to be we're not going to do anything, or we might shake up the roster a little bit, but they're not going to go in as sellers, obviously. They're not going to go in as full-on buyers like they did last year. I think they're smarter than that at this point. I think this season they're looking at it and they're going, maybe, we shake things up. If the right deal is out there, we'll send Smith or Granlund out and try and get a similar, player who hopefully plays a little bit better in return and shake the roster up a little bit, or we're not going to do anything at all. And those are, I think, the 2 best options for the Nashville Predators and the 2 most likely options for how they approach this deadline. But similar to the Florida Panthers, who we talked about yesterday, this is a very interesting situation that the Nashville Predators are in, and I think they're going to be an interesting team to watch heading into the deadline. What exactly are they going to do? How are they going to approach this? Obviously it's up to them to make those decisions. That's why they're getting paid the big bucks to be in management positions. And I'm not a management person. I'm just a fan, but that's how I would think that they would be approaching this and how I would be approaching this if I were them. But with that, like, comment, share, subscribe, follow on social media. All those links are down in the description below. If you'd like to further support the channel, the links to our Patreon and merchandise store are down in the description as well. Keep spreading the word about this channel. Let's keep this thing growing. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I will talk to you guys soon.